morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, May 11th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by Bucknuts columnist Brandon Castel. BCast, Michigan has 26 satellite camps scheduled, including one at Warren Harding. Seems like they are really pushing the envelope and then some. Your thoughts on Michigan having 26 satellite camps scheduled and the fact they're having one in Ohio?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little wild to think about because, you know, not too long ago we were talking about the end of satellite camps. And so, you know, obviously Jim Harbaugh was the guy that everybody had seen out there really pushing the envelope with these satellite camps that really got the NCAA's attention. And they came in and said, oh, that's it, no more satellite camps. And then they realized the ramifications of that and how it might impact some of the kids who really didn't have a chance to get seen. You know, if they weren't getting a chance to go to some of these satellite camps. So came back in reverse and said, yeah, we're going to go ahead and allow satellite camps. But I can't imagine that they had, you know, this in mind, you know, 26 satellite camps. You know, they're going to do a satellite camp now in Australia. I mean, it seems like, you know, if you give Jim Harbaugh an inch, he's going to take a mile. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. I can't blame you know, I think back to what Urban Meyer said when he first got to Ohio State, that it's about becoming the flavor of the month. And, you know, Michigan doesn't have a lot of things going for it right now in terms of on the field success. You know, they don't have a lot of guys. They didn't send a bunch of guys to the NFL. You know, they don't have a lot to look at right now. And I think Harbaugh is all about creating a stir. He does some weird stuff, that'll get some attention, get Michigan in the news. You wouldn't think Michigan would have to do that kind of stuff, but I guess when you haven't really done much for a decade, you know, you've got to go to some great lengths. But Harbaugh's a weird guy anyway, so, you know, I do think it's a little over the top. You know, I think that, you know, obviously he wants to make inroads in Ohio, inroads in New Jersey, so it doesn't surprise me at all. You know, I look at what Chris Ash is doing with Urban Meyer up in New Jersey, and, you know, you can obviously see the impact that Harbaugh has, so I think they'll revisit that a little bit next year. I can't imagine this is what they had in mind, but I can't entirely blame Harbaugh. It's just he's a little bit different than I think most coaches would go about it.
You hit on a good point. I think the NCAA is going to continue to look at this. They will continue to tweak the rules, and I think maybe they'll put a cap on how many satellite camps you can attend or how many you can host, however you want to word it, next year. I think they'll have the rules as is this year. They've already, you know, went back and forth so many times. But I think next year NCAA might step in and say, no, you only can go to, you know, 10 satellite camps or whatever it might be. Because really the spirit of the rule is the reason they brought it back, as we all know, is because, you know, schools like Bowling Green or Kent State should be able to come to Ohio State's camp, and they should be able to have their coaches there where they can scout all these kids that they normally wouldn't get on their campus, and kids that might not go to Ohio State, but they might get an offer from Bowling Green or Kent State. And that's why they brought it back, so those lesser schools can go to satellite camps and set up shop there. So, yeah, I tend to think, since that's the spirit of bringing the rule back, I tend to think the NCAA is going to step in and say, no, we're going to put a cap on this next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's about the spirit of the rule, and I think you're right. It's about the kids and really making sure that those kids who don't end up at the premier programs have a place to go and get some exposure. And I just can't imagine, you know, that they were looking at this as Jim Harbaugh hosting, you know, these high profile camps and trying to go in and make big inroads in some of the other areas in the country. And that there is, you know, obviously there's some gamesmanship to that, but you know, like you said, I think that's not exactly why they brought it back. So, you know, this will continue to evolve.
Let's look at true freshmen for Ohio State that might make an immediate impact this fall. The Buckeyes signed 25 in their 2016 class, ranked number 4 in the country according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. Urban said on signing day he wants 18 true freshmen to play right away. I think there's no way that's going to happen. I think it's going to be more like 10 or 12. But we're going to see a lot of true freshmen on the field this year. Only 4 played last year, BCast, which is incredibly low. I know Urban laments the fact that only 4 played last year, so they're going to have a ton of true freshmen and redshirt freshmen. But just looking at the true freshmen, who do you expect will make an immediate impact this fall?
That's a good question. I do. Obviously, last year you were coming off a national championship. You had a lot of your guys back, a very deep roster. So not entirely surprising that you didn't get a lot of kids from that class to play. But, you know, I do think you're going to see a much bigger impact this year. You've got a younger team, and you've got, you know, you don't have a lot of those returning starters on the roster. So a lot of jobs are open. And, you know, I know not a lot of the freshmen have gotten to get in the mix yet, but I do think there's some jobs to be had, and I do think there's some playing time to be had. A couple guys that I would say, jumped out immediately. I really liked what I saw from Austin Mack in the spring. I think there's a lot of opportunity at the wide receiver spot. He brings something a little different. He seems to be a very crisp route runner, guy who's got some sure hands, can make some tough catches. They've got a lot of speed. They've got a lot of some different guys with, on the outside with Johnny Dixon and Jerry McLaurin and some of those guys who can really get down the field and make big plays. But wouldn't surprise me if you saw a guy like Austin Mack jump in the mix at the receiver spot. I still think there's a chance Antonio Williams could crack the rotation at running back. We'll see, how things hold up with Preontae Dunn, but I wouldn't entirely rule that out. But then, I think I look at the offensive and defensive line. I think, Michael Jordan's a guy who's gotten a lot of playing time, but in the spring, and so a little surprising, to see a true freshman go in there and crack the lineup for the offensive line in the spring game. But he's doing some good things right now. And then defensive line, I think, is where you'll probably see the most action. Nick Bosa, Jonathan Cooper. I think you're going to see both those guys get into the mix. So, I think there's a lot more opportunity to get those guys in on the defensive line because you can rotate. Michael Jordan's going to have to win a starting job on the offensive line. You're not going to see a lot of rotating on the offensive line. So, I really think the defensive line and receiver position are the two spots where you're going to see a deeper bunch, more rotation from those positions. So I think you could see some real impact from those guys in those areas.
I think two guys are going to play a lot as true freshmen, Nick Bosa and Austin Mack, as you touched on. I think those guys, if they stay healthy, they're not going to be starters, I don't think. I mean, Austin Mack will be in the running to be a starter, but I think they'll be top backups and will play a lot. And then I think other guys that are going to play at least a little bit, Jordan Fuller comes to mind. Urban Meyer said on signing day, Jordan Fuller is going to play right away. Probably another guy, I don't think he's going to be in the running to be a starter. And there's still some debate if he's going to be a corner or a safety. He looks like a safety to me. I mean, he's already 6'1.5", 196 pounds, but Kerry Combs was adamant on signing day that he will be a corner. I wonder if he'll be one of those guys that plays corner his first year, then eventually moves to safety. But I do expect Jordan Fuller will play. Michael Jordan will play some. Jonathan Cooper, Antonio Williams. I have DeMario McCall written down. I think he'll be a guy that can maybe help out on the kickoff return team. But I just look at Nick Bosa and Austin Mack are probably going to play the most. I want to ask you about Bosa. He's coming off the torn ACL, of course. So that's like the one negative about him. But you watch his film, it's like he's ahead of Joey at the same age, which is amazing. He's not as big as Joey, but you talk to the coaches, you watch the film yourself, they say he's actually ahead of where Joey was. I mean, that says a lot because Joey wasn't, he was good throughout his time at Ohio State. He was good right away as a true freshman, though, as well. It wasn't like it took till his sophomore year for him to really break out. Obviously, his sophomore year was his incredible year, but, I mean, he was good right away. So, talk about Nick Bosa a little bit specifically. What do you expect to see from him this fall?
Yeah, I mean, the kid looks like a stud. Obviously, he was a 5-star prospect for a reason, and not just because he was Joey Bosa's little brother. I mean, obviously that gets you some attention, especially as Joey Bosa went on to have incredible success at the collegiate level. But, one thing about little brothers is they want to outwork their older brother. And, Joey was obviously blessed with some incredible physical skills and physical talent, that, most guys will never see and never understand. But, I look at a guy like Nick Bosa and say, he may not be quite as big, but he's going to go out there and try probably twice as hard to live up to what Joey did and to really make his own mark, both in high school and in college. So kid obviously has a ton of ability. But I think he kind of comes into a similar situation that Joey did when Joey, cracked the lineup at Ohio State. Was, you're looking at a younger team that they need some guys that step up and make some plays. Obviously they've got some established guys on the D line in terms of, guys we think are going to be in the mix in this Sam Hubbard and Tyquan Lewis and, those guys out on the edge, and they've got, Jalen Holmes is another guy who's going to be in the mix on the edge. But I think there's a ton of opportunity there because, we don't really, other than Tyquan Lewis and a little bit of Sam Hubbard, we really don't know what these guys are capable of. And you look at the inside of the defensive line and, I see a lot of opportunity there. I know there's some guys who have had some really good springs, and you look at a guy like Tracy Sprinkle or Jay Sean Cornell is another guy that's had some success, during the spring. But, I really think that if Nick Bosa comes in and he's healthy and he can work his butt off, I think his talent will shine through. I think that you'll see more and more as the year goes on them wanting to get him in the mix, whether it's inside, outside. I think him having that versatility to potentially play both spots will be huge to really get him into that mix. But got a lot of young guys. Like I said, Jayshon Cornell is another guy that I think, his ability to play inside, outside, I think is going to be a big benefit to them. We saw Draymond Jones look pretty good in the spring. So I think they've got some names now in there, but, I think that there's plenty of opportunity for Nick Bosa to be, if not a starter, like you said, to be one of those key reserves who can come in, and if you can get to the quarterback and you can make plays in the backfield, that's the easiest way to continue to stay on the field. There's no one, and the defensive staff are going to want to take him off the field if he's out there making plays.
Excellent insights, as always, from Brandon Castel. Thank you very much, Brandon, and thank you to the listeners out there for tuning into the show. Hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.